Hello, I'm Michael Shawn, and welcome to Roger Dykes Just Sayin. Roger Dykes is a teacher and counselor with a master's degree in family counseling from Texas Tech University. He is the owner of UV Blake Records and has written a book titled Non-Persons Rolling in a Normal World. And there's a few more things. Roger was born with cerebral palsy. Now a quadriplegic, he has been confined most of his life to a wheelchair. And for a while, even enjoying a career as a stand-up or sit-down comedian and after-dinner speaker. Disabled? Yes, but you forget about that pretty quickly because Roger thrives. So here is Roger Dykes.
Hello, Michael. I'm glad you could come in again today and bring all the podcast listeners with you.
Oh, yeah, so that's where they're at.
They're with you, yes. Why there's such a crowd.
Oh, man. We need a studio audience. I know there's the social distancing thing, but you have that entire home where you're at. We could put people in different rooms.
Well, we could do that, or we could just put them out in the amphitheater in the backyard.
Roger, are you in a mood already?
I'm just helping you along with your idea.
Well, I need lots of help. Thank you. Roger Dykes Just Sayin is underway, and we got you on here. I know what I need to talk about first, because it is something that happened on the last podcast, and after it happened, I caught it in the edit, but it was fixing to go out and go up worldwide, and I thought, I might not should have said that, but at the beginning of the last podcast, you and I were kidding around. You and I kid around a lot. Roger, I just have to tell you this. From last episode of your podcast, we opened up, you and I were kidding around, and I said something about the fact, are you drinking a beer? You had a soft drink or something there. I said, Roger, are you drinking a beer? Knowing that I would maybe have a fun little reaction from you on that. Folks, let me tell you, Roger is, for the most part, a non-drinker. But you being you, Roger, you never even blinked. You say, yeah, I always get soused before every show. And the only thing I did after that, I said, oh, you show business people. And then we let it go and we went on. And I got to thinking, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that will hear that remark and think, well, Roger might be a little bit of a lush. That is simply not true. Folks, I know Roger.
Well, let me also help clarify that too. I really couldn't be a lush because somebody else has to open the bottle and put a straw in it. So I'm totally controlled on how much I can drink anyway.
So you're not just not a drunk. You would be a lousy drunk if you were one.
That's probably true. See, it's hard for me to have any vices because I have to have help with my vices.
Oh,
I cannot have an independent vice. Someone has to help me get there.
Oh, man. I needed this morning. I'm glad we're talking. Hey, now, Roger, we've got kind of a heck of a show lined up here because
I'm glad I could be here.
Yeah, me too. Because something happened since we talked last, and I gave you a little heads up before the show and kind of told you that we may come from left field a little bit on this one, but it is real, folks. It is real. What I'm about to reveal here. People wanting to talk with Roger or visit with Roger or pick Roger's brain a little bit on things that he knows very well. And so is it time? Can I go ahead and go to this, Roger?
Yes. Let me warn you one thing, though, before you do. You remember what you just said about people wanting to pick my brain? Well, you remember there was an actor named Slim Pickens? Well, that's kind of what you got here. But take your best shot anyway.
Oh, well, I'm glad. There's Roger. That's the Roger we know, right? Okay, Roger. So we're going to go back to your email bag here. You, on the last few shows, have answered some questions for people, and some of them were in fun, and some of them were very serious, but you take it all in stride. But we really touched a nerve here. So again, I will tell you, folks, this person is real. He is a Marine vet, apparently experienced some remarkable things overseas. This is one of those people when you say, thank you for your service, that it just, if you understand, it really comes from the heart. And that's part of what this is about. Anyway, it says, I am a Marine vet. And the word Marine is all in caps. And that tells you a whole lot about the guy right there, who left my legs in Iraq. He says, I have several questions for you. You have a lot more experience than I do. Yeah. I don't mean to dissect everything this guy says, but when a gentleman like that says, sincerely, Roger, you have a lot more experience than I do, that is a great compliment. I mean, this guy's got his own experiences, pretty remarkable too. But he says, you have more experience than I do in a chair. Of course, talking about a wheelchair. The first thing he asks is, whenever someone walks by me in my wheelchair, like in the store, oh, Roger, I've heard you talk about this so much. He says, when someone looks away, like when he lifts his eyes to see them and they'll immediately look away. When someone looks away from me and mumbles, thank you for your service, it's as if he is not impressed by their sincerity. He says, I want to reply by saying, hey, you talking to me, I'm over here. But he says, of course I don't. What do you think about that, Roger?
Well, as we've talked many times on this podcast before, this is a common experience, particularly in his case, because he even looks more disabled with the loss of legs. It's just part of what happened to him. It certainly doesn't diminish him as a person, but it does make a different visual effect, and people are we're leery of what to do, what to say, and how to say it. They're saying complimentary things to him for his service, and that's good. But I also understand where he's coming from of, okay, why can't you look at me, talk to me, and treat me like the person that I really am?
Yeah, now, and he longs for that. You can tell.
I cannot give you there is not the silver bullet, great, always good answer for everything. But I would suggest to begin by saying to the person, thank you, I appreciate you saying that, and engage them in conversation that's going to make them realize you are a person.
There are several questions here. So he says, how do you deal with those kind of backhanded, have a nice day, hollow remarks? Now, that's his words.
Right.
That's how he feels about that.
Well, and I know that's how he feels, and I understand that because I feel the same way in many cases, because you realize when you're in this condition, you realize that people are saying things to you that are not necessarily sincere, heartfelt. They're trying to come up with cover of something to say. They've got themselves caught, if you will. They came up to you. They didn't think about you being there, and suddenly there you are. You're in a wheelchair. You look different. They look at you, and then they go, "Oh, now what do I do?" And so they say something, and
right.
That's good that they talk to you. I mean, it's good.
Yet another question.
Okay.
And Roger, this is something I never thought about. And I guess I have been guilty of the same thing. I know that I have walked up behind you and taken a hold of your wheelchair and said, "Roger, can I take you in the other room, or can I push you? Can I?" And what I'm really saying is, "Roger, can I help you? I would love to help you. What do I need to do? I'm counting on you to tell me." And so I understand where this comes from, but I had never heard of this before. And apparently it's common often. He says, another thing is people that come up behind me and grab my chair and say, "Here, let me help you." And he said, "I've had my finger caught in the spokes more than once." Does that happen to you?
Well, I don't get my fingers caught in the spokes, but yes, I know what he's talking about. And I know it doesn't happen that often, but now also I'm probably in a different situation in that I'm usually with a caregiver where he's probably looking more out available than I would be. But yes, I've had it happen. I've had the worse than that, if you can imagine, is to have a small young child, come up behind you that you're not expecting, and they decide to push you wherever they want to go. That can be. I've had a few dangerous run-ins with that.
I shouldn't be chuckling, I guess, but doggone it, the kids,
But here's the thing. Now he's given in his questions basically two extremes. Yeah. He's given the extreme of the person who ignores you totally, and the extreme of the one who's overly helpful. And neither extreme is what you want. You want somewhere in the middle. But if you someone comes up behind you, of course, you got your hands on the wheel, and they start to push, you're likely to get your fingers caught. I know how that feels. But if you can say, "Well, thank you for your," before they get too far gone, you can say, "I appreciate your willingness to help me, but right now I need to be, I'm here where I need to be. Thank you for your help, though, and maybe later on you could help me." Or something like that. Depends on where it is and what's going on.
I've got another question here from the same military vet, home from Iraq and having lost his legs over there. Mm-hmm. Says, why do you believe that? And listen, Roger, where this question goes and ends up, because he really plays it out here. He says, why do you believe it is so hard for adults to look me in the eye and talk? And why do they get upset when their children want to look or talk to me? He says, and this gives you great insight to the guy. He says, are they afraid that I will tell their children that I'm a vet, and during a conflict attack, there was a landmine that blew off my legs and killed my friends? I mean, man, this guy's in pain. And he says, rarely when a child asks, I don't say anything more than I was in an accident, and talk with their children about how my wheelchair works. Can you feel this guy, man?
Oh, yeah, because I've been there. I mean, I still have all my I have both legs. I'm thankful for it. But I've been there. I've had children come up and ask me all kinds of things. And I don't begrudge them any of it. I'll answer the question. Usually the way I will answer, because of my situation, different from his to a certain extent. But when they say, usually the question was, why can't you walk? And my answer has been, this is the way God made me.
Yeah.
And they're happy with that. Children do not want a descriptive answer. They want something that satisfies them. And you can satisfy them by simply saying, the reason I'm in a wheelchair, if they should ask that in his case, is because I don't have my legs.
Yeah.
Now, if they pursue it and they say, why not? You can come up with answers for that. You were hurt in an accident, or you were hurt in the military, whatever, depending on the age of the child, of course. But sometimes they don't want any more than just the obvious.
Yeah.
And you would think they would know that, but they're just curious. Let me explain to you this way. Years and years ago, many years ago, there was a cafeteria here in Lubbock. Uh-huh. And when you lined up to go down the cafeteria line, you walked by, and people could see you walk by, going in line. And on more than one occasion, a younger child, would turn in their chair as I went by in the wheelchair, and they would look and they would point, because that's what kids do.
Right.
And mother would reach over and grab them by the collar, as it were, and rattle every little bone in their body, jerking them around to the front, because she didn't want them looking, staring, or having, embarrassing her or me because the child was looking. Yeah. Well, the reality of the situation is, Michael, even if you were an adult, but as an adult, if you saw in the town you live in, unless it's in Africa, if you saw an elephant walking down the street, you would look at it, point at it.
Something different.
It's different. It's not you're making fun of it. It's like, I can't believe there's an elephant.
Wow.
All right, I'm different. I am different. When I go into a room with walking normal people, I'm going to be the only one there in a wheelchair, more than likely. Now, if you're in a rehab center, it's not that way, because everybody is disabled, and so the normal person stands out more than a handicapped. But in the normal world, we're going to stand out, or in my case, sit out. We're going to be there, and they're going to notice this. Children are going to think we're different, and we are. And they're in doing what they think's right. They correct the child and say, don't do that. Okay, now what happens is the child grows up to become an adult, and the adult person now ignores the disabled person, as was talked about in the earlier question.
Thinking that is the proper reaction.
Well, mother and dad trained them that way.
Yeah.
So naturally, that when they grow up, they're not as obvious about it, but they're still not sure what to do with us, because the last time they looked, they pointed, or they started to ask a question, they were corrected for it.
Roger, I have one more question from this same military vet.
All right.
This one's heavy, Roger. But I have read or listened to your book, Roger, that is available on Amazon. And I know how sometimes complicated this can be, because you have explained it well in that book. He says, how do I get the nerve to date? Would like to have the company of a female.
Yeah. Well, from our last podcast, I think what you do, you look at there are people, there are women, and if it's the other way around, if you're in a wheelchair and you're a woman, there are men that are going to be turned off with wheelchairs. by the disability. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that's true, but it is true. So obviously your field of possibilities is going to be dropped some.
It's going to be narrowed.
Yeah, and narrowed. Yeah. And I think, though, that you can kind of get the idea wherever you are in a social context, the people around you that would be dateable, single, available people, there's going to be a few that are going to be more curious about you, more interested in you, more things like that. Those are the ones that you're going to have the best chance with, as opposed to just randomly rolling up to a lady, wherever she may be, and saying, hey, what's going on, and all that, because she may be turned off by the disability in the wheelchair. But there are people out there, honestly, there are people out there who are single and available who are not turned off by the disability. Now, there's a lot of issues, a whole lot of things that go into our dating relationship that we probably don't have time to go into on this podcast. But there's complications involved. And to be honest about it, which I'm going to try to be, always honest in my suggestions. But as far as the initial contact goes, the best thing to do is just kind of be around and let them come to you, if that makes sense. In other words, instead of approaching the woman, you wait, and if you're in a bar or if you're in a restaurant or wherever you're at, there'll be people who will come up to you eventually, more than likely.
All right, but Roger, now I appreciate what you're saying. You're talking about technique now, but Roger, I just want to point out that his actual question is, how do I get the nerve? He is talking about the fact that this thing that has happened to him has changed him profoundly, which is what you just got through saying. And now it is for him, there is a mental thing too, in that he has lost confidence in himself. Right. Now, and that's what they're really dealing with. And let me tell you why I say that, Roger. Let me just come on out and explain the rest of this. I know you, Roger. I have hung around you, in and out of you, and I've worked on different projects for years. And I have said this before. I've said it in shows, and I've told other people this. The thing about Roger Dykes is, you can spend some time with Roger Dykes, and it is many times no time at all that you see right past his disabilities and just enjoy the person. And because the guy, don't mind me saying this, Roger, but the guy, Roger Dykes, is he's a lot of fun. And you know, my friendship with a guy, Roger Dykes, is like, I'm just friends with him because we get along, we see eye to eye on some stuff. Some we do, some we don't, but that's the way any good friendship should work. And so, having said that about you, Roger Dykes, the fact is, I'm around you for a few minutes and I don't even think about your disabilities. I'm talking to the person. What I just said about you needs to be understood, I think, from this vet who has had such a traumatic sacrifice for our freedom and for our country, who we all owe a lot to, man. And have this vet know that while we understand you question your nerve, think about how crazy that is, because this comes from a person who has demonstrated more nerve, more courage than perhaps anyone will ever meet.
There is such a difference in the courage it takes to go into battle and go through what he went through. And I admire everything he's gone through. But when you talk about relationships, building relationships, and especially in the first few attempts at building a relationship with a person of the opposite sex, this is a totally different kind of courage. It's not the same thing at all, because you're going to have you have a lot of men who've never lost anything in battle who have the same problem of being tongue-tied around the opposite sex. Okay.
Yeah.
Take that and add to it the disability, and it really he's more than putting himself out there. If he goes up to or calls a person on the phone or emails or whatever, they would come make contact. The point being, if the person he's interested comes up to him, it takes some of the pressure off of being rejected. I'm not going to be rejected by you if you walk up to me and say, hey, what's going on? But if I come up to you and you're not expecting me,
then everything's being laid on the line there.
Then in one fell swoop, I can be totally annihilated.
Oh, but that's never happened to you, Roger.
Well, actually, you're right. It hasn't, because I've never gone up to anybody and done that. I've actually waited for them to come to me.
You're not the tongue-tied type.
Well, no. Tongues work pretty good. That's about the only thing it does, but it works fairly decently.
Hey, before we move on here, I know that you would completely agree with me, Roger, to this listener, to Roger Dykes Just Sayin podcast, this Marine vet. We thank you for opening your heart, and we wish you all of the best, and like to know that a brother like you is out there and listening to this podcast. So it means a lot to Roger, I know, and to myself as well. I just enjoy doing this show so much with you. The other thing is, we need to remind folks that you'll be back every 3 weeks with a brand new podcast, and Lord willing, and the creeks don't rise, as they say. And they're definitely not going to rise around West Texas. It would have to rain for days to get the creeks to rise around here now. But man, it's good I get to see you. I'm looking at you on a big color monitor in front of me, and it's good to see you, Roger. And when we get together soon, will you be buying lunch?
Well, if McDonald's is all right with you, it's okay with me. McDonald's for you would be probably 3 shows worth of budget right there.
The people listening to this podcast have no idea how funny that is. But, man, Roger, will you please take care of yourself until we talk again?
I'll do the best I can. Let's don't forget that between then and now, they probably would want to tune in to the Free Range Texan, which will come out.
Oh, I love cross promotion. That cross promoting just gets my attention. That's great.
I'm sure it does.
Roger, we need to invite the people to subscribe to your podcast, however they listen to it. And it doesn't matter. Just subscribe any way that they pick up your podcast and listen anywhere, because that really helps things out too. So all the best to you, Roger.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Thanks for coming by, and we'll see you in about 3 weeks.
You've been listening to Roger Dykes Just Sayin. If you'd like to get a message to Roger, his Facebook account is listed as Roger Dykes. Become a friend, or you can send your questions and comments to Roger Dykes 51 @gmail.com. That's ROGERDYKES51 @gmail.com. Our podcast reveals a new episode every 3 weeks. Rollout is on Wednesday evening, shortly after dark, Texas time. Join us next time for our next episode of Roger Dykes Just Sayin. I'm Michael Shawn. On behalf of Roger Dykes, thanks for listening.